So I'm really happy today because I'm joined by a special guest, and I don't normally do guests, but I think this is a wonderful first guest to open up perhaps a series of guests. And I'm here today with Debra Silverman to talk about her new book, which I have written down. It is I Don't Believe in Astrology, a Therapist's Guide to Life-Changing Wisdom of Stars. And yeah, I wanted to sort of quickly read your bio. I think perhaps a lot of people know who you are, but for those that don't know who you are, Debra Silverman is a renowned psychotherapist and astrologer and has spent almost 5 decades helping individuals achieve emotional health and self-acceptance. Through a unique blend of astrology and psychology, Silverman is widely recognized for her transformative approach, which combines esoteric, soul-centered astrology with clinical therapy to guide people through life's challenges. She has worked with individuals, couples, and families, providing personalized healing methods based on the four elements: water, air, earth, and fire. And again, I Don't Believe in Astrology, a Therapist's Guide to Life-Changing Wisdom of the Stars is her latest book, and it was published on April 8th. So that was my first question. I was like, did you pick the published, April 8th as the birth date of your book?
I certainly had a vote. Yes, they gave me lots of dates. So
You think
looking at the
that's
chart and looking at my chart, it fit.
So thank you for joining me. And we were starting to talk before I turned on the recording, but something we have a lot of overlap in the sense that we come to astrology from this idea that let's not forget about the human element, and that astrology certainly has a deep history as a predictive tool, but how do we use astrology as a tool for self-discovery and even to understand the world around us? So that's how I came to astrology. And even as a teenager, reading about astrology from a very different lens, I think there can be some damage in that because it doesn't teach you how to really integrate and understand this. And I think that that's actually a strength of your book, is that gives people practical tools to look at the human part of themselves.
Yes, that's my specialty, the human parts.
So, with your work, I know that you have this background as a psychotherapist. At what point did you realize that astrology was a valuable tool in your work with clients?
When I was in graduate school, I had a come to Jesus meeting with the supervisor because I was already an astrologer. So I began very young. I was 19 when I started doing readings, but I began studying when I was like 10 years old, like you, like a young person. I was, obsessed with it. So I had to fight with the team because I was in classical graduate school and it was the 1980s. And they were like, they didn't know what I was talking about. And then I had to reference Carl Jung, who was quoted to say, psychology will be a dinosaur science until it includes astrology. So I really used him as my reference because he was an astrologer. And was the original father. Him and Freud were the
Yeah.
two together that began the word. Psychology didn't exist till 1930, till Pluto was discovered in Scorpio, or Pluto was discovered ruling Scorpio, but at that time it was actually
I think in
1930s.
Cancer.
It was in Cancer, but it was the first time we could ever see it with the telescope that was strong enough to detect the presence of this planet that describes the unconscious mind. So I was obsessed with the conversation about the unconscious. I've always been obsessed with what is wrong with us, and it is the unconscious
Right.
mind that is the root, that it's like contaminating factor that lets people hurt themselves or hurt another or sexually abused. That's all Plutonian energy. So I was insistent at a very, very young age that how could I do therapy without using the chart as the keyhole into somebody's psyche? I was like, what?
And I find it very interesting that we're actually doing this recording. Pluto is just in retrograde.
Well, it's in retrograde 75% of the time. So it's
Fair point.
all,
How do you feel about
but
Pluto
yes,
now in Aquarius?
it's very clear that I think that was the introduction of AI, and it will be the transformation of our culture. And I've been reading and studying AI. I don't actually use it because I have an aversion to it, even though I know lots of people that do, including my company. And I see it's radical. What I'm more interested in is from a big picture, is how did AI get invented, and what are its positive and negative attributes
Right.
that could, one, really assist us to utopia. and flatten the game, play a level playing field. It could really change it could change everything. On the other hand, it could be evil if not inserted with some policewoman to say, excuse me, emotional wisdom would be helpful. So there's a decision that collective hasn't decided yet. And we're at this precipice to see which way we'll go.
Absolutely. And in my work, I always say the astrology is 50%, you're the other 50%. This idea that the part that's you is conscious, subconscious, and unconscious. And astrology isn't a metric for consciousness and self-awareness. That part has to be revealed within the space of the chart. But to go back to AI is not conscious, not in the sense that it has.
Not yet, but it's leaning into that. There is a consciousness that is possible within its future renditions where it actually can observe itself. So at this point, you're right, but that is where they're headed. Just
Right.
like
And
we
then,
weren't conscious, like your grandma wasn't conscious. If you think back to the earlier version of the human, we had no self-awareness, but now we do. So the AI is not exempt from entering into a human dimension that could create something called consciousness.
yeah,
It's a debate
right.
at this.
And then the debate is what is consciousness? But that's a whole other conversation. But yeah, AI,
Big questions, you little Sagittarius.
I know you're probably looking at my chart and you can see all the Sag. So yeah, I mean, consciousness and the nature of our reality, why we're here, what is this all for? These are, of course, things that I definitely circle around to my
But
brain.
that's very funny.
But the Scorpio in me is also the side where, how do we work on ourselves? How do we become a better version? Something that I say to people is that Scorpio has the scorpion, it has the phoenix, it has the eagle, and it talks about this process of evolution that Scorpio as an archetype has to go through. And so, this idea of astrology as medicine for the soul, which I know that you talk about in your book, and astrology for self-awareness, that we can open up the space within our personal astrology. Because when I was 14, I was looking at books in the library that were quite common at the time. And this was the 90s, this is pre-internet. And now, there's memes that are teaching people astrology. But I would read things. And if you look at my chart, I have a lot of Saturn. I have things in detriment, which I'm not saying aren't a thing, at least from a classical perspective. But as a 14-year-old, you read something like Moon opposite Neptune. Most natives end up in mental institutions. True quote. I won't say which book it's from. The authors are long since passed away. But when you read something like that as somebody who doesn't have self-awareness or has a very low sense of self-awareness, it can be damaging.
Yeah, they
So
told me I was superficial.
they told you what? I'm sorry.
So funny. Those books told me I was superficial because I'm a Gemini Aries. So yes, they definitely have a old version of interpretation, which is why I wrote my book. My book is an updated esoteric using because in Alice Bailey, Scorpio is the only sign that will destroy its ego in the quest of its soul. So in Alice Bailey, Scorpio is the highest sign of the zodiac. But in regular systems, they say the meanest things. In esoteric, Gemini, which is ruled by Venus, not by Mercury, in the esoteric law, is the lover who has this gift rather than the dippy doo-dah, who is, it's fickle and playing promiscuous. So there's rewritten interpretations of the signs that are updating. And yes, that's so funny to think that you were the Scorpio or that was going to a mental hospital and I was the superficial dippy. I was so insulted. Superficial was a word they used, and I thought, and I had to look it up because I was very young. I was like, superficial. I mean, they called me Debbie Deep when I was little.
Right, right. And so this is where it's not age in the sense that lived years on the planet. You really have to reveal something within yourself to open up the depth and the higher expression of your chart. At least it's the way that I look at it. And you even talk about the low road and the high road of each sign, which I think is very helpful in your book.
Yeah, that's the whole book, you guys. The book is really about the psychological interpretations of the signs, as distinct from, to your point, the old school. And it's also about permission to admit that as humans, we have design faults. The whole first half of the book is less about astrology and more about the unconscious elements that operate in our psyches, which is the gremlins who undermine and say mean things about you and leave you insecure. You don't really know enough astrology. You're never going to know enough. Like the voices in our heads. And my job in that book is to adjust to the high road. Like, hold on a minute, turn on your observer and realize that you've got shit going on. Some person's talking about you 24/7, 365, who doesn't even like you, who lives in your head rent free. Who is that? And then once you become aware of the gremlins, of the unconscious, of the subconscious, there's some freedom to turn on awareness.
Yeah, and that observer mode is really important to develop. And I realize that's not something that's necessarily intrinsic to astrology. That's definitely something that's part of self-awareness and development and psychology. But when you're able to find, at least from my esoteric training, that's the seventh chakra, your little cockpit, and you're able to see from above, but with it not to be detached, you can make different decisions. You can see, okay, maybe I can take the high road. We typically take the low road when that gremlin, as you call it, or that instinct or that emotional pull takes us back to a very old space within ourselves. That is the battle within ourselves at all times, even people on their best days. And
And that's the nature of the beast. Yeah, it's no one's fault. Yes,
yeah,
exactly.
that's living.
It is the nature of the beast. It's how the mind is designed. The mind is designed to consume and eat itself. It's just like where cancer is so prevalent and self-immune diseases and the quality of depression or anxiety is so prevalent in the psychology of this human condition. It's no one's fault. It's how we're
Yeah,
designed.
yeah,
And when the observer comes on and you're listening to podcasts on astrology, it suggests that you're trying to wake up.
yeah. So, it's as Uranus is about to go into Gemini, I can only imagine how our minds and our ability to, you be in that sort of mentality, is what's going to change. It's this, for me, my perspective at least, we can't look back at, let's say, Pluto's last time in Aquarius or Uranus's last time, even in Gemini, even though, there are people who are still alive who were born before Uranus and Gemini because the consciousness of humanity was not the same in the 1940s or even in the 1780s and 90s with Pluto and Aquarius. So what does Uranus and Gemini mean, in 2025 in the world that we live in? Question mark. Question mark.
Are you asking me that question?
It's rhetorical, but hey, if you got an idea, jump right in.
It's just, I think you just named it. We are increasingly, it's an evolutionary game. This is how it goes. It's a spiral. Everything repeats itself. So we're back at the word war again, and we're back at the word, you know, depression, which follows the humans around since the beginning of time. These are spiral movements. The difference with Uranus and Gemini is technology. Uranus rules technology. Technology of what? Of Gemini, which is the mind. So there's going to be some very simple skill sets that are going to be taught to us. We're not going to have to go. In the future, the medical profession is going to be challenged because once the mind realizes it's a single factor that determines the illness. I have a toothache right now. It's so funny. I'm going for a um, root canal this week. And I'm so aware that it's my unconscious has properties that I can't identify. But if Uranus was in Gemini and I was born with that, because that's what's going to happen to the generation coming up next year, I would have a higher capacity based on our evolution. So the really issue is when it happened last time in the 1940s, those people, I love them. I was born in the 50s. So they were my elders. And they are some of my favorite people as Uranus and Gemini characters. Even more the people that had Uranus and Taurus. Oh, look at that. But that I didn't do that. But the downside of that generation, to make a point, is because there was no support from the zeitgeist. There were individuals who were non-traditionalists who I fell in love with these characters. But they were secrets, the man that was bisexual, the woman that didn't want to get married. Though this is Uranus and Gemini, the breaking down of old structures. But that wasn't acceptable then. It was hidden in the back room. Now, because Pluto's in Aquarius supporting Uranus and Gemini, and they will be trining each other, what a different story we're going to have.
Yeah, already as an astrologer, oh yeah, I looked up this question on ChatGPT about my astrology, and I'm like, oh my God, we're in that time where I don't, my personal belief is that AI is not going to come for astrology because there's always there is the informational side of astrology, but there's always the mystical side of astrology. And that, for me, maybe this is just my point of view, cannot be replaced by AI. So people will receive information and perhaps very good information from AI about their astrology, but to have the medium of the astrologer to be the intermediary between heaven and earth, I don't think that can be replaced, but I also believe in the democratization of information, hopefully good information that will come out of this time. And we're going to see it's going to be a completely different world by the time that Uranus is out of Gemini, because, yeah, as you say, we'll have that trine with Pluto in Aquarius. Well, I call them evolutionary planets, Uranus, Pluto, and Neptune, two evolutionary planets and air, element air. Movement,
I'm so
travel,
excited.
exchange, relationship, connection. It's going to be
I
different.
do think AI is coming for astrology. I don't agree with you. It's already happened. And of course, there's the human dimension, but I have so many people that don't know astrology who are reading my book who are diving into AI as their resource.
Yeah, that part I completely agree. And I need to use GTP more, not because I need to get my information from there, but because I need to be able to
Yeah, and I
get the
won't do it. I'm like,
consciousness.
well, my Uranus is showing through. I have not even, I know it's on the computer and it's waiting for us to, I have all these friends that use it. I'm holding out.
As somebody has a tech background, and so for me,
And
astrology
you
is
got an
just
11th house sun with Uranus
I
in like,
know. I think this is just my point of view. I live in a bubble. I'm self-employed, and then I'm on this retreat about a month ago with with women who are in the workplace, and they already use it. But for me, because I'm in this sort of bubble as sort of a solopreneur, like I don't really think AI. But now I'm like, wait a second, they're all using it like all these different ways. How do I even integrate this in a way that feels authentic to me? Because I don't want AI to write my work, because for me that's part of my craft, that's part of my art. But at the same time, AI on some level is coming for astrology, and I think we all need to be prepared. Even as I've had conversations with therapists, they're like, people are going to be using AI to go to therapy.
100%. Listen, you guys, it's a revolution. We can't see it. It's just like if someone told you, like 20 years ago when I was growing up, there's going to be this device that you're going to carry in your pocket that's going to know every single phone number and every single piece of weather and every single piece of news, and you're going to have pictures and photos. You'll never carry a camera. I would have been like, what are you talking about? Instead, it's right here.
Yeah,
And it
it's
never
my smart
leaves my
travel.
side. And I never ever leave the house without it. So similarly, we could not have seen that. We wouldn't have believed it. And now we live inside cyberspace. You and I have never met, and we're talking about stars. So be prepared. Just know that your mind cannot track, and it's not built. That's why we don't take care of climate change. Because the mind can't go into the future to think about what's going to happen with the coral, what's going to happen with the oil, what's going to happen with the heat, what's going to happen with this. Like we are all built, again, design fault. This is my first half of the book, with a limited capacity and me, I'm a little stubborn Mercury and Taurus that goes, no, I'm not playing with that AI shit. Well, good, Deb. Be the turtle, be the dinosaur in the back room, and hope they keep calling you.
Going back to your book, how do you feel that astrology can help people navigate, let's say, some of these changes within the framework of their own
Well, I
astrology?
mean, in your chart's a great example. When someone has three planets in the 11th house and Neptune on Mercury, your AIs, if you use it for you, I think you should definitely use it in the name of creativity and don't diminish their capacity to stimulate your intuition and to activate your visionary because you're a visionary. This chart is built. You really, it's a funny chart because you've got so much um, error by Pluto on the midheaven. I mean, you've got such a compulsion to communicate, but really, you should be a meditator. This chart is built to be a receiver. You are a conduit. So, what is AI if not the technology to give you permission to utilize that? Yeah, I feel like the medicine for astrology brought to you by each individual, like you're a visionary and you're someone that reads people and goes into their 12th house and sneaks up on them and Scorpioizes them. That's going to be your version. Mine is What was that?
I said that's, yeah, that's completely accurate.
And mine is the book, I should say, not my style, but the book is a very simple approach for people who I created a technology over almost 50 years as a therapist that they pay me a lot of money. I stopped doing readings, although I do them once in a while, but I've trained 23 women that are in my organization. That's not true. There's one man. Um, to do certified readings, and they have been working for me, and I refer them. People call me or they write me with their chart and say, who should I work with? And I specifically design a perfect fit for someone in your case that would be a technologically advanced soul who understood Neptune. But if it was asking for someone who was a gardener, who was a simpleton, who loved to be at home and cook, I would give them an entirely different astrologer. So I have networked the system, and so is true in my book. I minimized in the book highly technical information to simplicity so that the audience at a beginning level and advance could return to the basics. And so one of my favorite planets that I'm obsessed with is Saturn.
Me
And
too.
I have yeah, it's my very best friend. So I have a yod pointing to Saturn. I have Saturn opposite my sun. I have Saturn, the grand trine to my chart. It's a perfectly positioned planet that isn't very nice, but certainly has informed my entire existence. So that book has a lot in the book about Saturn.
Yeah, I noticed that, and I actually really well appreciate that as an astrologer because Saturn, for those that know my work, I'm obsessed with Saturn, and I realize that Saturn isn't always the nicest planet, and they're like, Katie, why are you so into Saturn? But it is a planet that when we really work with it, high road to use your language, you can build your life. You can learn the lessons that you need to learn. You can make something
It's why
new.
you're a full-time astrologer. For the people that are watching who are dilettantes, they practice all kinds of things. They're learning about chakras, they're learning about the Enneagram, they're learning about human design. All of that superficiality is not Saturn. Saturn says drill down, stay the course. I have a school twice a year in September and in January. It's only 6 weeks long, and they study your chart. But I use Saturn all over the chart and all over the school because I'm saying, listen, just study your chart. Stop flirting and have a date. And then go past the date and get into a relationship with astrology. And the way you do it is by managing your Saturn and going, uh-oh, my Saturn's in water and I'm not in the mood. Uh-oh, my Saturn's in air. I'm taking so many classes, I can't remember. Uh-oh, my Saturn's in earth and I don't feel capable. Uh-oh, my Saturn's in fire and I was really excited, but I'm really going to go outside now to play. Like, figure out where your distractions comes from and then call yourself out. That's Saturn. Saturn is not mean. He's just the high school principal. He pulls you into the office and he goes, look, it's Saturn return. It's 7 year cycles. It happens starting at 7, 14, 28. It's a classical symptom that time is calling your name. So, and when you get to know the high school principal, which he's my best friend, and so he goes, Deb. And I go, oh yeah, I slipped out of time. Sorry. I left class early. He goes, no worries. I know your intention. Go back to school. So he becomes your friend and your ally. And then what happens is, and this happened to me, then I became an astrologer at a very young age. And before I knew it, I was working with celebrities. I was flying around with Sting. I was hanging out with Madonna. I was given the gift as an astrologer because why? I was so committed and so disciplined and gave away as many free readings as I could and could not stop talking because I was so obsessed. And Saturn was like, it was insane. I have Saturn in Sag, sitting exact degree at 11 degrees right near you. So it demanded, it demands from everybody. Listen, I am almost 70 years old, and what's kept me young, Saturn, is that I exercise every day, I meditate every day, I don't eat meat, I don't eat dairy. I've kept myself really responsible to my digestive tract. I've kept myself really attentive to what it is that I need to do to be respectful, even though I'm a little bit of an eccentric because you have Pluto, I have Uranus on my head. So I have called myself out throughout this lifetime, like Deborah. In fact, it's interesting. There's one person who's a Sag, my Saturn's a Sag, that for almost a year now, I have not asked for forgiveness from. There's one person I spend my life looking behind me. This is my Saturn,
Mhm.
saying, is there anyone that I've hurt or I've been hurt by that I have not reached a resolve, that I haven't recovered my energetics from them or from me? And I can say that I had this, I'm going to tell you a crazy story. I was teaching astrology because in our school we have level one where you learn all about you. Then level two is the nuts and bolts from progressions to transits to learning about exaltations, all the details. And then level three, people come and they do a reading in front of me and I get to give them feedback. So it's a really powerful school that I designed. And in level three, I always do a meditation for the group. And that day, the meditation I heard, because I always ask my higher self to come in, and she said, I asked, don't ask me why. Your Scorpio will get this. I asked the question, is there anyone alive in my world that I have unfinished business with, that if I died tomorrow, I would regret not cleaning up the energy? And up came this man's name, who I hadn't thought of in 10 years. I thought, well, that's strange. During the break, during level three, when I was teaching, I always ride bikes. I'm an electric bike freak. So I'm riding my bike and I decide for some unknown reason to stop at Whole Foods. And I go into Whole Foods and I'm standing there not knowing what I'm doing there. And I look at the door and I see that man walking in. So I walk up to him and I say, this is going to be a weird conversation, but I was in meditation this morning and I asked the question, is there anyone that I've been out with? And you're it. And I just want to say to you, I'm really sorry. I know what it's about. Your wife had a audio tape. This is the dinosaur olden days in the car. You heard a session I did with her. It was actually a CD. And you heard me mention divorce. And in your mind, because she told me this, you made up a story that I was responsible for your divorce because I inserted the thought. And he said, yes, that's true. And I said, please forgive me. I see that, so much time has gone by and you're in a relationship and your kids have done so well. And I'm wondering if I can have a hug. And he gives me a hug. And then as I'm leaving, I say to, because he's standing holding a tray at the salad bar at Whole Foods. And I say to him, what are you doing here? And he goes, I don't know. And I said, me either. And I left. Now, that was the activation of a meditation where I asked the Saturn question, how can I keep my life updated? Is there anything about me where I've been dishonorable, if I've been disrespected, if I've disrespected someone? And the answer was yes. And the guy showed up and I got to clear the karma. So you can do this, you guys. Everyone can stop right now and look back at your world in the name of Saturn and say, when you get to the other side, is there anyone that's going to have karma with you that you could clean up before you leave, but you don't know who it is? And then just sit in silence and wait. And if it doesn't come the first time, keep asking. That's Saturn's high road, the quest for clearing the karmic experience of this lifetime, because be sure you know they're keeping track. You're being watched. The Akashic records have your whole story. All of that may sound woo-woo, but it's not. And
Great
that's
cloud
how,
drive in the sky.
what was that?
It's the great cloud drive in the sky. It's
Yeah, it's the
receiving
cloud, right?
everything.
That's where it came from. That's very funny. Yes. So permission to review your old relationships, your stepmom. You don't have to ever talk to them, but in your mind, you can do the clearing and ask for forgiveness and undo the karma without even talking to them.
This is great actually because no, you know, but Saturn is in its last leg of Pisces. Saturn is on South Node as well, or sorry, North Node, because my South Node is there. But and I'm just saying this from as a human being, but I'm also saying this as an astrologer. I don't think it's been easy with Saturn in Pisces because that high road is a very high road. At least this is my point of view. Because if we're really going to take, and I think you encapsulated the something that you can really beautifully do with Saturn coming to the end of Pisces, is to sit in meditation and to ask these questions. Because Pisces being the baggage that we don't want to take with us to the next life. Talking about Saturn, we were talking about Pisces, and then the internet got Piscean.
We're having the funnest interview. Everything's going live time. We forgot what time it was. The computer just died, and Saturn's in Pisces going retrograde.
So what I was saying is that what you were expressing about this, sitting, meditating, asking your higher self, is there anybody that I still have something unresolved with? I think that's a beautiful, practical thing we can do as Saturn reaches the last few weeks, really, of Pisces. Because that high road of Pisces is a very beautiful road, but we're humans and it's not easy to always connect to that high road of Pisces.
And it will be coming back, you guys. So it's going on May 25th, it leaves, and it will be coming back for the end of the year, October, November, December. So if you don't want to do it in the next few weeks, consider it for the end of the year because it is a
Yeah.
very important practice if you want to keep your karma clear.
Yeah. Yeah.
I attribute my success to Saturn, that the reason why this lifetime I have been, I have 50 women in an organization that are all astrology students, and many are astrologers, and many are having a very successful practice because they came and studied with me. And that's because my Saturn wanted to activate your Saturn and had some criteria to do so. You've got to come through all three levels, and then you've got to come and do a reading in front of me more than once for me to establish credibility in your style and your ability. And then I start sending you clients. So if anyone's interested in becoming an astrologer and doesn't know how, and then we have, so one level is about you, two is about the nuts and bolts, three is about doing the reading, and level four, which happens only twice a year, is how to use the funnels, how to go online, how to establish your niche, how to make sure that you can go and do Instagram and social media, and we teach it.
No, that's great because of course we all need to know the nuts and bolts, but if you're going to be do the Saturn work where it's like you've got a successful business and you can pay the bills and keep the lights on, I think that's something that I've heard from different times. So like, this is great, but how do I actually become an astrologer and run a practice?
And I teach it full time. And that is because I was once you. I began as an skilled astrologer who was obsessed with it. It actually what you would love is in level two, I give away a script. It's all of like 5 or 6 minutes, but it's the structure of how to do a reading so you land the plane. So you don't just talk about the planets and where they're going and what the transits are. You actually have a focus. And what I've been told so many times is that the best part about our school is that we give them that script at the end of level two. And every single certified astrologer and everyone in our school uses the script. And it's not long because I don't have a very good ability to follow with my strong Uranus, but it does give you like the missing element and what the Saturn cycles are and it's all based on Saturn,
Mhm.
what your
Yeah,
life lesson is.
it's good to have a framework. I mean, for me, I come to the chart like it's a space, like it's a house. And so we go through the chart like we're walking through a space and we are meeting the different planets, but also getting out the contract, the paperwork for this house. That's
I
Saturn.
love that.
So for me, and this is why Saturn is such an important planet, it's like you made choices. You came up with this contract, even though I don't, maybe somebody believes something differently. But for me, you're like, I want to learn about Saturn and Pisces. I want to learn about faith. I want to learn about compassion and forgiveness. Not always an easy thing. I think Saturn, personally,
It's not
Saturn and the water
easy.
signs
Yeah.
are hard, but I have Saturn and Virgo. Practice makes perfect. Keep doing
Saturn,
something.
nobody likes hello, nobody likes their Saturn, period. So it doesn't matter where mine's in Sag. You would think that'd be so fun. Yeah, but I get in so much trouble because I say shit all the time.
The Saturn of faith, or same, yeah,
That I have.
same.
That what I'm built for. Having gone through a very, very difficult childhood and a very difficult lifetime, Saturn has been my best friend because I am so committed to paying the piper, so to speak, to making sure that I'm on the right side of the fence with the principal. Like, oh, he knows me. He sees me coming and he waves. Remember that in high school? Don't want to see the principal.
Right. This might have been in your book, and please correct me if I'm wrong. I think you say, can we prepare for our Saturn return? And I think you had an answer for that.
Yeah, which was no. No, that's not true. If you're young and you're listening to this and you're in your 20s, the thing you have to ask yourself is, do I remember? This is why you would get a reading. This is our reading. The re way I teach is everything's about purpose. So, do I remember why I came here? For some people, if they're an artist or a dancer or a singer or a painter, that skill came in so young, they didn't get a vote. Now, you could leave behind your promise and what you contracted to your point, and then you'll find that when Saturn return comes, they start smacking you around because you're in the wrong job, you're in the wrong relationship, you're in the wrong town, and Saturn kind of yanks you. Saturn's not nice when you're in the wrong spot. But the upside of Saturn for me at 28, I was living in Vancouver, Canada, and I was on a radio. It was very before computers. So you have to remember, I'm young. Nope, that's wrong. I'm old. And I was young then. And all I had was an ephemeris. And they asked me to go online to do a astrology on the radio. And it was the number one talk show from BBC. And I got on and I opened up, can you imagine? I opened up the ephemeris, somebody calls in, I go, "Oh, your birthday is May 6th." And then but I was so accurate because I had spent years at that point studying the ephemeris in the bathtub, opening that book and just reading it like it was a book to read. So this is the definition of hard work, drilling down, loving something. And then when I got on the radio, I stood out. And then they made me a full-time position. And that's what created my success was I was a young girl. Such a funny thought. In a studio every week, they hired me after that first interview to be an astrologer on this really popular radio show. And that gave me the reputation in the city of Vancouver. But that was because of Saturn, because I'd been doing it. That was 28, but I'd been. So how do you prepare? Pick something, stay the course. Don't get distracted. I'm always saying the same thing. I feel like a high school principal. But if you don't really learn your skill, and some people have past life memories. I came in, you did too, with the memory of astrology. Some of you are just beginning. That's okay. Just make the note cards. In our school, we do multiple levels of teaching, videos, art, audio, PDFs. I teach, so you're inundated with it. And that's what makes a skill set is being able to really do the Saturnian work and to prepare for Saturn return, especially at 58 to 60, which was when my school started. So that was the second one, is just say yes. How do you prepare for Saturn return? When the impulse comes for you to break up in that relationship and you don't want to, you've got to say to yourself, yes, this is my Saturn return. She told me to say yes. When they ask you to change jobs or you're leaving the town or you're having to let go of your family for a little bit because you got to go do therapy, just say yes to Saturn. Don't argue. You don't want to argue with Saturn. You're never going to win.
No, you're not. While we're here in a physical body, we're under the laws of Saturn, time, karma, aging. So that's who's got the plot while we're here. It doesn't mean that
Get the plot.
we can't work on our, or it doesn't mean we can't transcend our karma, but you're still living and breathing. So I once was talking to a client and we were talking about the Saturn return and I sort of say, well, the Saturn return is when you say yes to life, the first Saturn return. And she said, how do you know I said yes to life? And I said, you are still living and breathing on this planet. And she was staring down the barrel of her second Saturn return. I'm like, let's sort of review the course material, like where are we at? Because it is to prepare for the second Saturn return. But the cycles of Saturn, the opposition, the square, I'm coming out of the opposition barely. It's really that forms the structural framework of your life. We need Saturn in the sense that it creates the bones, it creates the structure that your life wraps around. So age 14, I'm reading Brian Weiss's Many Lives, Many Masters. I'm going to the library, obsessed with past life regression as normal 14-year-olds. I got my first computer for Christmas 1993. This is pre-internet. It's DOS based, but my father, of all people, put astrology software on, and I, looked at this chart that in black and white, and I was like, "Hey, Dad, what does this mean?" He's like, "I don't know." So I'm having to teach myself reverse engineer the
Wow.
chart, and my intuition was always saying to me, there has to be more than just this like party trick. This is going to happen to you. Oh, you've got Venus and Aries, so this is what this means. It's like there has to be a deeper purpose and meaning for this information,
Scorpio.
wisdom. But it was my first Saturn return, which was a dumpster fire for me. But that's where I had this very particular moment standing on the subway platform in New York City where I used to live, and I was like, I want to be an astrologer. It was 2008. And I felt my whole body become alive. And so it was like this sort of inner knowing that I'd stepped into something that was there for me.
Oh, I love that so much. 2008 on a subway. Isn't that great that you remember that?
I have a crazy memory. I
That's Mercury conjunct Neptune.
Yeah, I just
That's what it
I
is.
can't remember names, but I can be a walking ephemeris at times. I can see things in a linear timeline. I can sort of like, how do you remember these dates?
Yeah, I call it the idiot of savant. I don't know where my phone is or my purse is, but now that I've seen your chart and your Mars is at 11 degrees, I will remember.
But that lady's got her Mars conjunct with Saturn.
Sitting on my, because your Mars is sitting right on my Saturn exact degree. So those, you're right. Yeah, these are astrologer symptoms. We have bad cases of this. This is like being an astrologer. The stupidest things stick in my head. I can tell you every year of the ephemeris where Saturn is.
Yeah, pretty much, but not every year, but within within the more recent
Yeah, well, it's
times.
50 years. In 50 years, you'll be able to.
Yeah, definitely have been climbing the hill with Saturn. So, the first half of the 40s are a time of rapid personal growth and transformation that prepares you for that Saturn opposition of the mid 40s. And it's like, all right, what are we doing? Is this it? You need to
You
commit.
know, you're going to love this. This week during Wesak, I don't know if you know what Wesak is. Wesak is the Buddha's birthday. And the
Right, right.
Buddha, but he was born under a full moon and he died under a full moon of Taurus. And in the esoteric law, Alice Bailey's version of esoteric, she predicted that every 100 years, the hierarchy would come back together to consider the nature of the human condition and whether or not our evolution was worthy. And they were going to, so during this next, today, we're not going to
Monday
obviously,
is the full moon.
yes.
It's opposite.
So,
It's on my sun.
right. So this is extremely important, not for personal interpretations of the chart, but for this invisible hierarchy, which is the overshadowing beings. Like, if you believe in, as we do, the unbelievable connections that occur in the invisible, you, particularly with your Neptune and Mercury, that there's this overshadowing, protective, higher self. There's angels, there's beings we can't see. They are going, it's been predicted once every 100 years, people like um, Melchizedek and Saint Germain and Michael and Jesus and Buddha are coming together to say, let's review the human condition. So just so you know, we are being watched, and there is a protection built into the system that is considering what are we doing to the earth? Like humans are the strangest creatures. Let's just
It's
admit
true.
that. And that there are moments in time where we neglect to acknowledge that there are, you know, I think meditation's undervalued to actually sit in silence with no thoughts. And even though it seems like nothing's happening or there's no engagement, that is not to say that we're not being watched or provided for or influenced. And that story I told you about that day at Whole
Yeah.
Foods, that was 100% my higher self saying he'll be at the front door and you'll be able to have it. Like, what? But that's happened after years of me sitting in meditation. So I want to encourage all of you, even if, like, I'm a Gemini, I'm not a good meditator, but I time my phone for 5 minutes and I put on the button to start with, and then I put on the button for 10 minutes, and then I put on the button for 20, and I let myself resign to my mind. I put it in its seat. I imagine putting it in its seat and saying, you don't talk. You little Gemini, you're going to sit quietly. I'm giving my higher self a chance.
Yeah.
And then just sit.
No, I completely agree. Meditation is very undervalued, but it is nutrition. It is you are not feeding something that is it's not what's the word I'm looking for? But you need to feed that part of you because there's so many people walking around that are starved for something that's actually going to nourish their soul. And it's not to say that sitting in silence for 5 minutes is going to be the cure-all, but it begins to open up the path for you to be able to feed that part of you. Different spiritual traditions. I teach energetics and consciousness. We have 7 bodies, and you can't just put food in your physical being. You have to nourish the other bodies as well. Your soul, your akashic body, your causal body is your fourth body. Okay, what are the other ones doing? So yes, even a Gemini or somebody who's very strong with Mars or Mercury placements, you can just walk. But I'm I love practical small wins because the small wins are cumulative, and the 5 minutes becomes 20 minutes, and perhaps it even becomes longer. And something that people can do is that they can take their pulse for 5 minutes or by the wrist or by the neck. Because when you take your pulse, not as a medical act, but as you feel the movement of your blood, it puts you back into your body and it gets you out of your mind. It puts you into the universal rhythm and flow. And it's not just the blood on this side, but it puts you into the flow of blood on the other side. And that immediately starts to change your brain waves and it starts to put you into alpha state. The more that you can do it and open up to it, it can help you open up to a theta state. And it's hard sometimes for us to empty our minds. But if you're in the beta, and even if you're in the alpha, your mind is still doing this. So it's to start to help you open up. And when you're in theta, that can get you into that cockpit, that can get you into that observer mode. This is from more the structure of the science and the brain waves. And at that level, it's not to say that you don't need counsel or outside perspective of your life. I just think as humans, we need that. But you will not betray, you will hopefully less betray yourself. You will learn to listen to your higher self, your higher wisdom, your higher guidance, and you will make it this way and not a this way. You will say a yes, you won't say a no. Because, and I'm a human being too, we constantly don't listen to our guts. We don't listen to that inner voice. That inner voice, we all have it, every last person on this planet. What would happen if we listened to that inner voice more? Maybe the world would be a better place. Maybe that's my Neptune talking. But it's very important to have that nutrition because I think there's a deep ache right now.
It's like I always say, it's like eating McDonald's. We don't realize that our bodies are living on fake substance, which is not nutritional. And that if you want to have a homegrown, homemade, organic food that was done with love, you give yourself permission to put your attention on slow down, choose your food, choose your words. We're in a rush. I don't know why everybody's in a rush. I always wonder that. I live in Hawaii during the winter and I practice walking slowly, and now it's become a habit. And I have to tell my friends, I'm sorry. I figured out one of the codes for me, because I am a speed freak, was to slow my energetic body down for nutritional reasons. And it's why I'm not aging.
And sometimes it's important to listen to your codes because when you don't, your body will talk to you. I mean, even though I'm not from New York, I have 20 years in New York, so that's kind of a programming. It's just how do I get from point A to point B as fast as possible. But I'm now living in a place that doesn't run on New York codes. There
I
are
love that.
deer, there
And
are
I love, there's deer. That's so
owls, there's
I love that so much. And I happen to love New York City. There's times to go fast, and I'm really good at it because I spent most of my life walking way too fast. And to your point, you're in New York City, you got to get from Kodak from one to you got time. I love that feeling of and then you go, then I'm living in Hawaii and I'm barefoot at most of the time. And I notice that my aging process slowed down. I mean, I'm going to my 50th high school reunion in a couple months. And it's crazy to think about that I was in high school 50 years ago, because I feel like a high school student. I feel like, my delight in like I've been here in Sedona for the last few days. I get in the car, we start driving, I'm like, oh, like, are you kidding me? And everything turns into like I'm a 6-year-old and I'm like, stop the car. I want to go kiss those mountains.
I mean, there are pretty mountains. I gotta,
Oh no,
having been
that's
to
you
Sedona,
guys. If anyone hasn't been to Sedona, you want a holiday that will change your life because you get outside and you let the beauty wrap around your mind and you forget how you've been complaining and how you've gotten distracted and how you feel slow. It's a really important practice in non-aging. Back to Saturn. Everything's Saturn. I think everything's Saturn. My tooth is Saturn.
is that too the
Aging
Saturn?
Saturn, my discipline, being an astrologer, taking the school, doing level 1, 2, and 3, saying yes to the full meal deal. We have people that do interest calls. So if you just want to hear because if you're an astrologer already, you can skip level 2, but you can't skip level 1 because level 1 is a psychological, astrological class that tells you about your nature. Level 2, if you know transits and progressions and aspects and houses, and you've got that, well, you can skip to level 3. But the level 1, my whole system in my school is the psychological. Whether you've read a billion books in astrology, if you still talk shit about yourself when you look in the mirror, you aren't doing astrology.
So, with coming to the end of our time together now properly, what do people need to know about your book?
I mean, it's entertaining. The book is funny. I call myself out. I practice the observer live time in the book and say, I'm a Libra rising. I was codependent. I have Mars in Cancer. I'm a mush. I'm Gemini, and I have this need for people all those things became self-evident as the years went on. And I show you in the book how I did it, and I ask you to do it. So one is the observer. It's probably the most important. The end of the book is my favorite. The last chapter is called The 13th Sign. It's a non-dualistic point of view that reminds you that this whole book was based on your ego. That as soon as you get an astrology book, you open right to your sun sign.
It's
But
true.
and that the rising sign in esoteric law is called the ascendant or the rising sign because it's not the way you look. Old astrology only focused on the rising sign as a mundane activity. It's not. In esoteric law, they say throw away the chart and just aim for your rising sign. So that's in the book. You're going to learn about the rising, you're going to learn about Saturn. And the other thing that I teach in my school that doesn't get taught, whatever house the sun falls in is the most important house in your whole chart. So you're an 11th house sun. Of course, we're talking about AI and astrology. It's your favorite topic. I'm an 8th house sun. My whole book is about sex. Just kidding. Is about the unconscious
Oh,
mind. Scratch that off. But it is about how your gremlins nibble on you, and what astrology informs is the nature of your gremlins. So based on what house the sun is in, based on the position of Saturn, I do very simple. And the best chapter is the very end where I say, okay, put the book down now. Enough with your ego, enough with your soul. Let's just talk about the part of you that is outside this matrix, who's funny, who's timeless, who's unmoved by your silly storyline and is actually quite enthralled by whatever we're talking about that's relative to your ego gets put in the back burner and you're more into the meditative state. So the book has an arc,
yes.
and the last part is I've now become obsessed with the relationship with the tarot and astrology, and I've just written a book about that. And it's not public yet, but I am going to be doing a course with, do you know what Shift Network is?
No, I don't.
Yeah, I didn't either. But in September, I'm doing a course on astrology and the tarot. So anyone here who's interested in this Shift Network, SHIFT, and not shit, the Shift Network, worthy to study the tarot with astrology because it really does have a arc of consciousness and the
Does.
evolution of species. And boy, have I fallen in love with that.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of I mean, I'm not an expert at all in the tarot, but there is an arc of evolution in the tarot, and there's even for me, there's an arc of evolution in the zodiac, and for me, the zodiac is this path that we all walk, and you can do it a million times. You can do it one time for your life, but this idea that every time we pass by Pisces, it becomes an evolution to hopefully we get to the end of our life and we're like, you know what, I don't want to take this baggage with me. I want to leave it behind. I want to feel that I am at peace with myself and peace with my life, and then we can go on to the next life.
It's so beautiful, Katie. You're definitely older than your years. You definitely have a passion for astrology, that's evident. And you definitely have a gift with that chart with three planets in the 12th and a Scorpio, Sun and Uranus in the 11th. This is a very profound, in case you're all wondering, great person to go get a reading from.
Thank you. So yeah, I've been cranking out with the Saturn for the last 15 years. So definitely every time astrology, I'm still learning from astrology. It still reveals itself to me, and I'm sure the same is with you.
Oh my
But
God, I love it so much because as a Gemini, I've never gotten bored yet.
you can't. And I just, every time we start the zodiac over each year with Aries, I'm like, okay, it's a new path to walk. It's a new time to discover from sort of that beginning of the fire of Aries all the way to the waters, the cosmic waters of Pisces. And so we're in 2025 as we record this, and we are right on that edge of Saturn's coming to the end of Pisces. We've got Neptune and Aries, and we're gonna have Saturn in Aries. I know just for June, July, and August, end of May,
And
but
all of 2026?
all of 2026. But we are in that time where what do we want to bring with us into the next life, even if that next life is 2026? So I think it's really important to have a lot of tools and resources that are both practical, of course, feed the mind, read lots of books, but as we were talking about with meditation, highly underrated. Sit with yourself, get quiet, cultivate the higher self, or as you say, the observer, and so that you can navigate 2026 and beyond from that point in the ship of your life. So,
Thank you so much for the
so
work you're.
how do people find you, Deborah?
It's just three words, Deborah, Debra, Debra Silverman Astrology. You can find it on Instagram, you can find it on TikTok, you can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Facebook. I'm everywhere. I'm an old, young astrologer.
Well, you're a Gemini, so definitely will always have that youthful energy. And my Gemini moon definitely appreciates it and certainly appreciates our conversation and your time for me today. So
Thank you
I
so
look
much.
forward to sharing this with everybody and so they can learn more about your school, about your book, and how to get in touch with you.
Thank you so much.